There is a federal function, and when you look at what the U.S. model for industry is, we, the government, rely upon the ingenuity of the free enterprise system to make things successful. And it doesn't always work. In fact, there are more failures than there are successes in general. The nuclear industry is part of the energy portfolio. And there's a national security aspect that makes the government want to be involved. And the executive as well as the legislative branch work together to develop rules and try to provide incentives to make the industries go in the direction that's best for the country and its national security. And energy security obviously is part of national security. There have been a lot of wars fought over energy supplies. None over uranium yet. Hopefully there never will be. So I mentioned the government role in the long-term high-risk R&D. The industry may also want our assistance in developing technologies that lower the economic risks. For example, the new reactors that are being contemplated are large 1,000 megawatt plus reactors, and the capital costs keep climbing. 10 years ago, a new reactor was estimated at maybe $2 billion for capital costs. Now it's close to $10 billion. And for most utilities, they're betting their company on the success of that one project if they invest in it. So that's why the Loan Guarantee Program was created by the DOE to help the first movers for new nuclear plants to have some financial assistance to lower their risk. And the loan guarantees are not loans, but if there is a failure, not due to the fault of the utility, then the government backing is there to help. So it helps them get the financial resources in place to do their initial construction. We're close. And for the last several years, we've been close. We've only issued one loan guarantee to a Southern Company for Plant Vogtle for two AP1000 units. And if we get those started, I think that will really be important for starting a nuclear renaissance, so-called renaissance, in the U.S. We've been talking about it for several years, but we're sputtering. And a lot of people are doubtful that there will be new nuclear plants in the U.S. But the Loan Guarantee Program will help. The R&D program is helping in reducing the economic risks by using economics as one of the drivers for the R&D program. And we're not going to develop technologies and invest money in scaling them up for potential commercialization if they're not going to be economically competitive. And one of the failures of the GNEP program was that we, the government, were pushing reprocessing plants and recycling of plutonium and other transuranics when we didn't have a good economics case. And without the government, the utilities were not ready to do recycling in the U.S. Now, our model is different from some of the other countries that are doing recycling, like France and Japan. There they have a lot heavier government investment and backing for the technology and the industry. And as a result, the government is taking on a larger portion of the financial risk than the U.S. government would with our industry. So is our model the right one? Yeah, I guess it depends. If our energy security is maintained with the model we're using now, then yes, obviously. But if it's not, we may have to change our models to look more like one of the other countries. The Nuclear Waste Policy Act required the government to be responsible for the management of used nuclear fuel and high-level waste from commercial reactors. as well as the DOE-owned high-level waste and used fuel. So that's a legal requirement. The U.S. government back in '82 decided it wanted to take on that responsibility, and it started collecting money into a fund from the utilities that generated nuclear power. And so that fund was intended to provide a repository for the storage, permanent disposal of used fuel. The politics have changed the scenery several times, and right now we have no repository program in effect, with the Yucca Mountain project being canceled. So the responsibility for evaluating other options has come over to the Nuclear Energy Office. It's part of fuel cycle R&D, and we've got a whole program dedicated to evaluating storage, transportation, and permanent disposal options that look well beyond the environment of Yucca Mountain into different geologies that may have already been evaluated and rejected in the past, but may be attractive now. So we'll, in our R&D program, continue to evaluate those, and we'll also take aboard next year the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission that the Secretary has formed to give us their recommendations on used fuel management strategies for the future. We'll take those into account and use those as well to guide our R&D program. Plus, we'll take aboard the experiences in other countries like Sweden, Finland, France, and others that have a repository program that appears to be more successful than the one we had with Yucca Mountain. And the key feature of those other programs that we did not have here in the U.S. was a very, very large public involvement and competition for siting. And
competition between communities?
Yes, the communities wanted to be involved in the siting because obviously you bring an industry into a community, there's large income from the tax base increase, et cetera. So that may be a better model for us to use in the future, and it might be more successful at spanning multiple administrations.
There seems to be growing recognition of the real benefit, the jobs benefit that nuclear power provides,
right,
in terms of high-value jobs, and both in terms of new reactors and fuel cycle technologies. It is possible that, do you think it's possible that a lot of communities will be interested in fuel cycle technology?
I do. When we started GNEP in 2005 and 6, one of the things we did early on was make some awards to communities to do siting studies to tell us why in the world they would want to site a recycling plant or a fast reactor. And the response was very, very positive throughout the country, not just at DOE sites, but in other communities that didn't already have a DOE affiliation. Those reports are still in our knowledge base, and we refer to them periodically. They're going to be very valuable as we move forward. And I think those communities, among many others today, because the economy is not nearly as good as it was 4 years ago, we're going to get even more interest. And in the fuel cycle facilities, just like reactors, have a lot of initial construction jobs and the raw materials that go into the construction. And then once they're built, you have a base operating and maintenance force that have to be hired, and that also adds to the base within each of those communities. So a lot of interest.
It sounds like a lot of the work.
A lot of those barriers that were there before by the people against nuclear are going away, as not just people recognize that it's jobs, they also are more aware of the impact of greenhouse gas emissions and the potential for its impact on our future. So a lot more people are sensitive to that than before. They're looking at nuclear as perhaps one of the options that will help alleviate that issue. So even the head of Greenpeace, who was staunchly anti-nuclear for many, many decades, is now a nuclear proponent. So.
Right. You know, it sounds like even though GNEP did not necessarily move forward to deploy technologies, it sounds like a lot of the things that you did within that program provided an excellent model for how to establish a technology development program and prepare for deployment.
Yes, I agree. And even though we were only active for about 3 years, we did get a lot accomplished. And the work we did in that program has, in my mind, formed the basis for some of the research facility needs we're going to need in the future to replace the aging infrastructure in our national labs. We're using Band-Aids today to keep the infrastructure in place, and it is in decline. When you compare our infrastructure to other countries like China, we're falling behind, and we need not only to try to keep the existing infrastructure going, but build new research facilities. In the GNEP program, one of the facilities we promoted and did design on was an advanced fuel cycle facility that would be able to do small and large scale research in advanced separations, fuel development work, safeguards equipment development, and the integration of all of those technologies in one location. I think that's a very good model. It may have to be scaled down for a future research facility because of the high cost in this environment. With the economy being fairly poor, not strong right now, our sites need to be a little bit lower than they might have been otherwise. We're not going to get billions of dollars from Congress to go build large new facilities. It's just not going to happen. I think that I've left the leadership in very good hands, and it will be up to them to continue to train the young people and bring new talent into the program. It's not necessary, even though we've had budget increases every year since we started this program. That's not the goal, the driver. The real driver is the research and the goals that the research is trying to accomplish. It's not how much money you get from Congress. That has been the easy part. We go to the Hill and on our budget requests, we explain what our research is trying to accomplish, and the money comes. And we've been very successful, and I think that the team will continue to be successful in that work. The fellowship program has a lot of statistics on the number of fellowships we've awarded and how many students have gone to different places when they finished with our program. I don't have those off the top of my head, but we do have them in reports that we've generated. All of our reports are available, for the most part, out at the document management system in Idaho that we maintain. Many of them are available on the public websites too. But the university students, the various achievements in breakthroughs in technology have been very rewarding. Our teams have shown that you don't need to rely on old technology to meet your goal. You can improve upon that. A good example is the development of the UREX Plus suite of technologies that demonstrated at laboratory scale that we can pretty much separate anything we want out of used fuel. Then we have to decide what we want to do with it after we separate it. And we can do it in a manner that keeps the proliferation risk low. We never proved whether it was economical, but that's later on in the research process. As you scale up, you want to make sure it's economical. So the UREX Plus demonstrations, the work with the foreign countries that our team has done. Good, strong example is fast reactor irradiations in France Phoenix reactor. We were able to get experiments into that reactor before it shut down for the last time. And we're in cooperative agreements with other countries like Japan and now China and perhaps Russia soon to take advantage of the research facilities they have to meet our needs. And we're promoting activities like restart of the test reactor in Idaho as